Hey, it's Mike Monday here with your daily dose of insight, inspiration and information to get you really motoring in your music or creative life and career. And today we're going to talk again about procrastination. See, the first time I did a Facebook Live, I just did it because I was procrastinating for so long about doing Facebook Lives that it just got to a point where I just had to start one and press record, and as a result I wasn't prepared. I had a lot of nerves, and some of the information, some of the what I know about procrastination got completely garbled. So I thought I'd do this one again because Alex Grabiner asks, I think I understand the point about fear. This was in response to the garbled video, but I'm not sure I fully get the overwhelm piece. Is it a lack of clarity regarding purpose? I find often that it's not any individual task that overwhelms me, but the sum total. Well, Alex, I totally understand why you didn't get what I was talking about, because I was all over the place. So, one of the things you can take from that is just do whatever it is you're procrastinating about, because you can always fix it later, which is what I'm doing now. But before I actually go on to what all these strange symbols are on my whiteboard, if you have an obstacle or a challenge that is holding you back in your creative work, in your creative life, in your creative career, then let me know in the comments, or if you want to remain anonymous or you're a lurker, feel free to send a message to my Facebook page. Not my personal profile, my Facebook page. I rarely check my personal profile. So, why do we procrastinate so much? I think everybody on the face of the earth is procrastinating currently about something. I certainly am. One of the interesting things, though, is that those things we're procrastinating about the most are often the things we need to do the most. And the reason for that is, the reason we procrastinate about them probably can be broken down into three separate things. They're kind of linked and they feed into each other, but the first is fear, obviously. I was really scared of doing that Facebook Live for some reason. I've got no idea why now. I feel a bit silly, to be honest, for feeling scared about it, because what's the problem? But anyway, fear. And the thing is about fear is that your unconscious mind, the bit you're not aware of, wants to protect you from what it perceives as being frightening, and will give you all kinds of excuses. Your mind will make all kinds of excuses not to do the thing that you are scared of. So, for instance, if you're procrastinating on finishing a track that, somewhere inside you know is basically done, it's probably because you know that finishing it means it's going to be judged by others. And the funny thing is it's actually not that funny, but the thing is about being judged by others, what I call social fear, what is called social fear, is that social fear is actually processed in the same area of your brain as the fear of death. Now, scientists think, apparently, although I'm no scientist, but scientists think the reason for this is that our brains are essentially the same as they were when we were living on the plains of the Serengeti. So our brains are kind of set up, have evolved to work in a tribal context. And being judged harshly by people, being rejected by the tribe, was actually a death sentence when we lived on the plains of the Serengeti, because you didn't have the protection of the tribe and so you died. So that is why you were so scared of that judgment, and that's why I was so scared of doing a Facebook Live, where I was actually interacting with people and seeing people speak to me like in real time. It's because it is basically the same as the fear of death, which is pretty full on, isn't it? So what do you do about it? What I did about it was I decided that I wasn't good enough and that I needed to do lots of different things before I did my Facebook Live. And in terms of your music production, you probably decide that the track isn't good enough, and you tweak and twiddle until you get sick of it, so you can't actually finish it, thereby protecting yourself. Maybe you decide you need to learn something else before finishing it. Maybe you decide you need to make version 5069 rather than move on and make the next one better. And remember, there's a big part of your mind that prefers the certainty of being stuck to the uncertainty of what finishing something finishing something and putting it out into the world will mean. Because certainty to your brain equals safety, and uncertainty equals danger. So that's fear. That's the first thing that causes procrastination. The second, which actually increases the amount of fear, is lack of clarity and confusion about what it is you're doing. When you're not very clear about what it is you are trying to do, then that will actually cause more fear, because it's uncertainty again. So before you go into the studio, if you don't exactly know what you need to do in order to finish it, you don't know what is left to do, you have a load of decisions, of unmade decisions. And your brain, again, it's all to do with the way that your brain works. Your brain wants to conserve energy and will put obstacles in the way. So it does that because every decision is your brain using more energy. It's a survival mechanism. So if you have a load of unmade decisions, or in other words, a lack of clarity, your brain knows that it's got a lot of heavy lifting to do in order to do the thing you're procrastinating about. So it gives you excuses and reasons to procrastinate for longer. So that's the second one. And the third one is overwhelm. And funnily enough, we make things too complicated for ourselves, thereby increasing that decision load. And we make things way too difficult, way too complex. We try to eat the elephant all at once, or create an elaborate number of things that we have to do before we do this thing, which are just too overwhelming and complex. We really have to understand that essentially we can only really focus on one thing at a time. So for instance, in terms of these Facebook Lives, I procrastinated about starting them for months because I was thinking, oh, I've got to get some software, which means I could do them straight from my computer rather than on my phone, and live stream them to YouTube at the same time, and I must do this, and I must do that, and I must do the other. And this procrastination got so ridiculous that I eventually recognised that I was doing it, and simply, for the first one, pretty much just press record on my phone, hence my nerves and garbling this content the first time. So, fear, confusion, overwhelm, and often these things will be linked. You'll start creating more complexity in order to avoid the thing that you are doing. Because you are confused, you will feel more fear. So it's kind of all mixed up, but those are the basic things that are causing you to procrastinate. So, what do you do about it? Well, the first thing you do is get a pen and a piece of paper or a pencil and write it down what the goal is, what it is you are trying to do. For instance, finish X tune, finish whatever the tune is called. Here, you are creating clarity about the actual end goal that you are trying to achieve. So that's step one. Step two, brainstorm on that same sheet of paper literally everything that you can think of to do that thing. So make all the decisions that you can make about what you need to do, try, everything that you can think of. Here you're making decisions ahead of time and reducing that decision load. Third, remove, this is a really important one that a lot of people miss, is third, remove anything in that list you've just brainstormed which is not 100% strictly necessary. Cross off as much as you can so that you're left with only 100% essential actions. Again, here you are reducing your complexity and reducing that decision load. 4, put that list into an order, an order of action. Again, as you do that, making sure that you remove any that are not 100% necessary. Again, creating clarity, reducing complexity. Then, at the top of that list, there will be a step of some kind. But there's probably a much smaller step you need to take first in order to do that step. So, for instance, if your first step is something to do with the actual tune that you are finishing, like change the compression on the bass line or try another melody, or whatever it might be, what is something that you need to do first, really simple and really small, in order to do that step? So for instance, you need to sit down at the DAW and turn it on. make that step your first step. Okay? So instead of the step, which might still be a little bit unclear and difficult, find a much smaller first possible step. And then finally, decide when you're going to take that first step, and 100% focus on taking it at the time that you've decided. And here what you're doing is you're reducing your fear by only allowing your mind to focus on something that isn't scary and overwhelming or confusing. So if you're focusing on sitting down at the DAW, that's not scary, that's not confusing, that's not overwhelming. You're just focusing on the smallest possible step. And actually that, focusing on the smallest possible step, works throughout the process. If you get like overwhelmed or confused, or you're not sure what to do, just think, right, what is the next smallest possible step to do? It will stop you procrastinating. It's a really good way of stopping yourself procrastinating. So, I hope that's been helpful. Pen and piece of paper, write down the goal. Brainstorm everything you need to do. Remove anything that isn't necessary. Put them in order, removing anything that isn't necessary. At the top of the list, there'll be a step. Put a smaller step above that. Make a time, a date. Focus on that smallest possible step. So, if that doesn't beat procrastination, goodness knows what will, because it certainly has worked for me time and again. So, in the comments, don't forget to let me know what's the #1 obstacle that's been holding you back in your creative career, in your creative work, in your creative life, and feel free to send me a Facebook message to my Facebook page if you want to remain anonymous or you're a lurker. And if you know somebody who might benefit from what I've shared with you today, please share it, tag them in the comments, or just go old school and tell them about it. So, I'm not going to do any over the weekend. It's Friday here in Sydney. Have a great weekend. I'll see you next week. Onwards and upwards, and go and finish something.